Let me tell you something that most entrepreneurs don't want to hear. You don't own a business, you own a job, and the worst part, it's a job you can't quit. Most founders believe that the moment they register a company, get a logo, build a website, and start making sales, they are business owners. But in reality, they've just created employment for themselves. They left a 9-to-5 job to work 24/7 for something that depends entirely on them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If your income stops the moment you stop working, you don't own a business. You own a job. And this is the difference that most founders completely miss. A job is something where your effort equals income. No effort, no income. Less effort, less income. You are the engine. You are the system. You are the sales team. You are customer support. You are operations. You are marketing. You are fulfillment. If you disappear for 30 days, everything collapses. That's not a business, that's self-employment, and self-employment is just a high-stress job with risk attached. Now, don't misunderstand me, there is nothing wrong with starting as self-employed. In fact, almost every successful founder starts there. The problem is not starting there. The problem is staying there. Most founders build something that revolves around their skills instead of building something that runs on systems. They build a business that needs them at the center of every decision, every sale, every delivery. They become the bottleneck. Let me explain it clearly. Imagine you are a freelancer making $5,000 per month. You work with clients directly, you close the deals, you do the service, you deliver the result, you handle revisions, you chase payments, you are making money, you feel independent, you feel successful. But what happens if you get sick? What happens if you take a vacation? What happens if you burn out? Revenue drops to zero. That's a job. Now compare that to someone who owns a company that generates $50,000 per month. They don't fulfill the service themselves. They have trained people, they have processes, they have scripts, they have automation, they have dashboards. If they step away for 30 days, revenue might fluctuate slightly, but it doesn't collapse. That's a business. The core difference is this: a job depends on your presence. A business depends on systems. Most founders miss this because in the beginning, hustle feels productive. Working 14 hours feels like progress. Answering every message personally feels like control. Closing every deal yourself feels necessary. But slowly that hustle becomes a prison. You wake up stressed. You check messages immediately. You worry about clients. You worry about cash flow. You can't switch off mentally. Even when you're with family, your brain is still at work. Why? Because everything depends on you. And when everything depends on you, you don't own an asset. You own responsibility. And responsibility without leverage is exhausting. Here's another way to understand it. A job pays you for the hours you put in. A business pays you for the systems you build. Most founders focus only on revenue. They ask, how do I make more money? Instead of asking, how do I remove myself from the process? Revenue is important, but freedom is the real goal. If your business makes $20,000 per month, but requires your constant involvement, you haven't built wealth. You've built a demanding employer, and you are its employee. That's why many founders secretly feel trapped. They can't quit. They can't slow down. They can't relax. They can't scale easily. Because scaling requires removing yourself. And removing yourself requires letting go of control. And that's the hardest part. Most founders believe no one can do it as good as me. So they don't delegate. They don't document processes. They don't create systems. They don't hire properly. They stay at the center of everything. And ironically, that's the very reason they can't grow. The shift from job to business is not about making more money. It's about changing the structure. It's about asking, can this run without me? Can this sell without me? Can this deliver without me? Can this operate without my constant supervision? If the answer is no, you are still in job mode. And here's the dangerous part. Job mode feels safe because you are in control. Business mode feels risky because you must trust systems, people, automation, processes, but only one of them scales and only one of them gives freedom. Now that we understand the structural difference between a business and a job, we need to talk about something far more dangerous than strategy, psychology, because the real reason most founders stay stuck is not lack of knowledge. It's identity. Most entrepreneurs don't realize this, but they are emotionally addicted to being needed. When you are at the center of everything, you feel important. Every client message comes to you. Every problem requires you. Every decision passes through you. Every win feels personal. You become the hero of your own company, and that feels good, but that feeling is exactly what keeps you small. Let's break this down carefully. When you start something from zero, you survive by doing everything yourself. You hustle, you grind, you sell, you deliver, you troubleshoot, you fight for every dollar. And because that effort creates revenue, your brain builds a belief. My effort equals success. So naturally, you double down on effort. You work longer hours, you answer faster, you micromanage more, you control tighter. And at first it works, revenue grows. But here's the hidden shift that happens. Your business doesn't grow around systems, it grows around you. And when growth is attached to a person instead of a structure, scalability dies. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth most founders avoid. If you are involved in every decision, your business can only grow at the speed of your energy, and energy has limits. You can't 10 times your hours, you can't 10 times your focus, you can't 10 times your emotional capacity. So what happens? You plateau, revenue stagnates, stress increases, you feel overwhelmed but trapped because if you slow down, income drops. This is the founder's psychological prison. But let's go deeper. Why don't founders fix this? Because stepping out feels like losing control, and control feels like safety. When you control sales, you believe quality is protected. When you control fulfillment, you believe standards stay high. When you control hiring, you believe culture is safe. But what you're actually doing is building fragility. A real business is anti-fragile. It doesn't depend on one person's mood, health, or availability, but a founder-centered operation is extremely fragile. One burnout, one illness, one personal crisis, one family emergency, and everything shakes. Now let's talk about ego, the part nobody likes to admit. Many founders secretly enjoy saying, "No one can do it like I can." It sounds like high standards, but often it's disguised fear, fear of being replaceable, fear of delegating poorly, fear of training someone, fear of investing in people who might leave, fear of losing significance. So instead of building documentation, SOPs, onboarding systems, and management layers, they stay in execution mode because execution is familiar. Execution feels productive. Execution gives instant feedback. Building systems feels slow. It feels boring. It doesn't give immediate dopamine, but systems are what create scale. Let me give you a simple mental shift. Operators focus on tasks, owners focus on architecture. If you spend your day completing tasks, you are operating. If you spend your day improving processes that complete tasks without you, you are building. Most founders say they want freedom, but their calendar tells a different story. Look at your week. Are you in client calls all day? Are you solving operational problems daily? Are you reviewing minor decisions constantly? If yes, you are still the employee, just with more responsibility. And here's the painful irony. Many founders leave corporate jobs because they hate reporting to someone, but then they create a business where clients, staff, and cash flow pressures become their new bosses. They didn't escape employment. They changed employers. The market is now their boss. A real business changes that dynamic. A real business builds leverage. Leverage means one action produces multiple results. One marketing campaign brings recurring leads. One system fulfills hundreds of orders. One trained manager handles daily operations. Your effort multiplies. In a job, effort equals income. In a business, effort creates assets. Assets work even when you don't. Now let's address something even deep. Some founders don't actually want a business. They want control, and control is expensive. If you want total control, you must accept limited growth. If you want scale, you must accept imperfection. Systems will never be perfect. People will make mistakes. Processes will need refinement. But that's the price of building something bigger than yourself. The transition from job to business is not operational first. It's emotional first. You must be willing to let others represent your brand, let go of micromanagement, accept short-term inefficiency for long-term scalability, invest in infrastructure before it feels necessary. Most founders wait until they are drowning before they build systems. By then, they are too overwhelmed to build properly, so they stay stuck, and years pass. Revenue may increase slightly, but freedom doesn't. Most founders don't fail because their product is bad. They fail because they built something that requires them to survive. And anything that requires you to survive cannot outgrow you. Here's the harsh truth. If you are the best salesperson in your company, the best operator, the best problem solver, and the final decision maker on everything, you didn't build a company. You built a dependency. And dependencies don't scale. They stretch until they snap. The structural difference between a job and a business is not revenue. It's removability. If you remove yourself and everything slows down slightly but continues operating, you have a business. If you remove yourself and everything stops, you have a job. It's that simple. And most founders avoid testing this because they're afraid of the answer. The shift from raider to owner requires one brutal decision. You must stop being the doer and start being the designer. Operators execute tasks. Owners design systems that execute tasks. That's it. If you are spending your day doing 10 an hour thinking, you will never build a $10 million company, because the value of your company is determined by the quality of decisions you make, not the quantity of tasks you complete. Most founders confuse motion with progress. They answer emails, jump on calls, fix client problems, review ads, check dashboards, respond to Slack messages, and at the end of the day, they feel productive. But nothing in the structure improved. Nothing became independent of them. The machine still requires their hands to turn. A real business is engineered. It is built like a machine, where inputs predict outputs. Leads go in, sales come out, clients go in, results come out, problems go in, solutions come out. And the machine keeps running because the machine is documented, trained, measured, and optimized. In a job, knowledge lives in your head. In a business, knowledge lives in systems. That's the transition. If your sales process is, I just get on a call and see what happens, that's a job. If your sales process is scripted, tracked, measured, improved, and trainable, that's a business. If fulfillment depends on your personal skill, that's a job. If fulfillment follows documented SOPs that another trained person can execute at 80 to 90% of your level, that's a business. Perfection is the enemy of scale. Most founders refuse to delegate because someone else won't do it exactly like them. But 80% done by someone else frees you to build the next system. And building systems is what multiplies income. Here's the structural formula most founders ignore: document, delegate, optimize, replace yourself, repeat. That loop is how companies grow beyond their founders. You document what you do, you delegate it, you optimize the process, then you remove yourself, then you move to the next bottleneck, over and over again. And that brings us to the real constraint. In most companies, the founder is the bottleneck, not the market, not competition, not ads. The founder. If every major decision requires your approval, you are the bottleneck. If every client escalation lands on your desk, you are the bottleneck. If hiring only happens when you personally interview everyone, you are the bottleneck. And bottlenecks cap growth. Businesses grow at the speed of their constraints. And when the constraint is your time, growth is limited to 24 hours per day. Real owners think differently. They ask one question constantly: how do I make this decision once instead of 100 times? That's systems thinking. Instead of solving the same problem repeatedly, they build a rule. Instead of answering the same question daily, they create documentation. Instead of reviewing every detail, they create KPIs and let numbers speak. KPIs replace emotion. Dashboards replace micromanagement. Processes replace guesswork. And when those are in place, leadership becomes strategic instead of reactive. Another shift is compensation thinking. In a job, you pay yourself based on effort. In a business, you pay yourself based on ownership. That means profit is not the leftover after chaos. It is structured. It is predictable. It is tied to performance, metrics, not mood or hustle. And here's where most founders get uncomfortable. Building infrastructure often slows revenue temporarily. Hiring costs money. Training takes time. Writing SOPs feels unproductive. Installing systems requires discipline. In the short term, it feels like you're moving slower. But in the long term, it's the only way to accelerate without burning out. Think of it like this: staying the operator gives you speed but no scale. Becoming the owner gives you scale but requires patience. Most people choose speed because it feels good today. Few choose structure because it pays tomorrow. And this is why small businesses stay small. Not because they lack opportunity, but because the founder refuses to evolve. The moment you stop asking, how can I do this better, and start asking, how can this be done without me, you cross the line from self-employed to business owner. That is the structural shift. In the final section, we're going to talk about what this means for wealth, valuation, freedom, and why most entrepreneurs never actually build something sellable. Here's the part nobody talks about. If you cannot sell your company, you don't own a business, you own a job with extra paperwork. Let that sink in. A real business is an asset. And assets can be sold, they can be valued, they can operate independently, they produce cash flow whether the founder is present or not. That's what gives them worth. But most founders build something that cannot be sold at all. Why? Because the business is them. If a buyer asks, what happens if you leave? And the honest answer is revenue drops by 60%. Your company has no real enterprise value. It only has personal income value. And personal income is not an asset, it's labor. Buyers don't buy hustle, they don't buy personality, they don't buy potential. They buy predictable cash flow. Predictability is what creates valuation, and predictability only comes from systems. This is the real difference between building income and building wealth. Income stops when you stop working. Wealth continues when you stop working. If your company depends on your relationships, your charisma, your personal selling ability, your direct involvement, you haven't built wealth. You've built high-paying employment, and that's fine if that's your goal. But most founders say they want freedom. They say they want time. They say they want scale. They say they want generational wealth. Those outcomes require structure. Let's talk about valuation simply. Businesses are valued on multiples of profit, but that multiple depends on risk. The riskier the cash flow, the lower the multiple. And the biggest risk factor in small companies is founder dependency. If everything flows through you, risk is high. If revenue depends on your presence, risk is high. If clients stay because of you personally, risk is high. High risk means low valuation, which means you worked for years to build something that someone will barely pay for. That's the brutal reality most entrepreneurs never calculate. They focus on monthly revenue instead of enterprise value, but revenue is vanity. Enterprise value is strategy. Here's another perspective. Imagine two founders each making $30,000 per month. Founder A works 60 hours per week, closes every deal. O versus fulfillment, approves every decision. Founder B works 10 hours per week, has a sales manager, has documented fulfillment processes, has team leads, reviews weekly KPIs only, same revenue, completely different businesses. Founder A owns a job. Founder B owns an asset. Founder B could sell for a multiple. Founder A could only sell their client list, maybe. This is why the transition from operator to owner is not optional. If you want long-term wealth, it's required. And here's the final shift that changes everything. Stop asking, how much can I make this month? Start asking, what would make this business valuable without me? That question forces different behavior. You start documenting processes. You start building redundancy. You start training leaders. You start installing reporting systems. You start making decisions based on longevity instead of urgency. And over time, something powerful happens. The company becomes less emotional, less chaotic, less reactive. It becomes stable. Stability creates confidence. Confidence attracts better talent. Better talent improves performance. Improved performance increases predictability. Predictability increases valuation. And valuation creates real wealth. Most founders never reach this level because they never step out of execution mode. They stay busy, they stay stressed, they stay necessary. But being necessary is not the goal. Being replaceable inside your own company is the goal, because replaceable means scalable. Replaceable means sellable. Replaceable means free. And here's the final truth. A job pays you to work, a business pays you to think, an asset pays you to own. Most founders stop at the first level. Very few build the second. Almost none reach the third. The difference between a business and a job isn't effort. It's architecture, it's systems, it's removability. And until you build something that survives without you, you haven't built a business. You've built a responsibility. Now, the real question is, are you building income or are you building an asset?